All right. Greetings, friends. As our friends are still coming in, should be able to start in 2 minutes. But this is a hybrid session. So we have our friends joining in online and us who are here physical, and we're able to go on well. I believe it will be well informing, and we're able to have actionable items to do right after this. So, and I have my colleague Isabel Bora, who will be co-moderating with me. But for now, yeah, as we settle in. Yeah, good. I believe we can start, Frederick, with Dr. Kenneth Mtata. Can invite him to start for us. Yeah.
Thank you, Kenneth. And our dear program director, Reverend Dr. Kenneth Matata, is going to speak with you now. Ivars, if you could spotlight Kenneth, please.
Thank you very much for having me in this session. Maybe I should start by extending my heartfelt congratulations to the General Secretary of the All Africa Conference of Churches for convening this second All Africa Youth Congress. This gathering has now become an inspiring platform for nurturing a new generation of young African leaders, young people who are patriotic, faith-driven, and committed to transforming our beloved continent into a prosperous, peaceful, and secure Africa where we can call the place home. We appreciate the tireless efforts and thoughtful planning that makes this Congress possible. But we are especially grateful for the opportunity to be invited to host this workshop on intergenerational climate justice, a theme that speaks directly to our collective future. Today, we stand at a decisive moment in history. The triple crisis of climate change, environmental destruction, and biodiversity loss is no longer a distant threat. It is our present reality, already devastating lives and livelihoods across the African continent and many other parts of the world. And it is children who carry the heaviest burden. Rising temperatures, floods, droughts, and flood insecurity threaten their physical well-being, while the uncertainty of a warming planet weighs deeply on their emotional and spiritual health. From the Sahel to the Horn of Africa, from coastal towns in the inland villages, the cries of children rise, pleading for a future free from ecological neglect and environmental injustice. The ecumenical movement, particularly the World Council of Churches, has led engagement in climate advocacy, influencing policy, supporting member churches in mitigation and resilience, mobilizing faith communities to take action for the care of creation. Yet climate misinformation continues to spread, often fueled by companies that see the climate justice agenda as a threat to their profit margins. It is in this context that the World Council of Churches embraced a new path, the litigation route, as an act of prophetic justice. The newly released WCC resource entitled Hope for the Children Through Climate Justice, which all of you will have access to the link, is a practical guide to help churches engage meaningfully in this emerging field, rooted in the biblical conviction that if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, as we read from Matthew 17, verse 20. This handbook equips faith communities with theological, practical, and legal tools to hold accountable those who profit from environmental harm, particularly financial institutions that fund over 90% of global carbon dioxide emissions through continued fossil fuel expansion. But let us be clear, litigation is not about hostility. It is about justice. It calls financial actors and governments to redirect their investments toward life-giving, sustainable alternatives that protect creation and secure a livable planet for our children. This is a movement of accountability and hope. Our purpose is not to condemn, but to transform, to confront injustice while cultivating seeds of intergenerational solidarity. Hope for the children through climate justice offers pathways to accelerate real solutions, drawing on the moral authority of faith and the urgency of scientific truth. Together, we affirm the sacred right to life, not only for today's children, but also for generations yet unborn. Let us therefore move forward in faith, wisdom, and courage, trusting that even the smallest seed of action can move mountains. May this training on this resource inspire and equip us to build a world where our youth and children inherit not despair, but hope. We believe at the end of this training, most of you will be able to take on some cases, some legal cases in your own constituencies. And we look forward to a transformative generation of young people who claim a future for themselves. Thank you, and may God bless you as we share in this journey toward climate justice. Thank you, Frederick.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matata.
Thank you so much.
And it's my pleasure to now hand over to Kevin Miner and Dr. Isabel Bora, who are both on the ground leading this workshop. Over to you, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you, Frederick and Dr. Mtata for that. And just to get us into the rhythm of it, we are going to share a song led by Lakitisa. It's called the Path of Justice song. It was done by Faith Sebwa. She is a Kenyan. And she was the youngest WCC delegation member at COP28, only at 13 years. And I think if you Google her, you'll find her inspiring works. And just to mention, she's as well hearing impaired, but she developed this song for us and a poem for us. So I invite Lakitisa to lead us into it.
Good afternoon, everyone, on the ground and also online. So as Kevin mentioned, we have here the song, The Path of Justice. And for this one, I'll kindly request to have the song being played. So every one of us, as the song is kind of like being launched, we'll learn here how to sing it, because it's a song worth using it in our daily routine, as it inspires change.
In whispers of ancient sacred tales, where justice walks and truth prevails, we learn to lift our voices high for future worlds, for earth and sky. Our Bible speaks with words so clear, to stand for those we hold so dear. It tells us to defend the weak, to use our strength so truth may speak. Through storms of doubt and winds of fear, we find the courage to persevere. With faith in hand, we'll pave the way for brighter, kinder, fairer days. Financial powers, fast and strong, we call them out. books of laws and how to stand, to speak our truth, to make demands. And if that fails, we know the code to find the courts and give our all. From gentle talks to bold appeals, we seek what's just for wounds to heal. Together we'll make justice rise and shape a world that never dies. So let us walk this path so wide, with faith and strength and hope as guide. For we are young and fierce and free, in faith, in love, in unity. For we are young and fierce and free, in faith, in love, in unity. We fight for right, in faith, in love, in unity. We fight for right, in faith, in love, in unity. We fight for right.
Some people are coming in the room, so we are waiting for Kevin to resume and let us know when we can proceed, including with online participants.
And also, we need the room unmuted, please, colleagues in the room.
Okay.
Oh, thanks. It's
Ivas, I hope you can hear us now. Ivas?
Yes,
yes, all okay now. Thanks.
Okay.
there you go.
Good. So I was describing the video that we're going to watch next. It explains how climate emergency puts our future and the children's future at risk. And it calls us to act, to check where our money goes. Does our money fund pollution, or does it fund climate solutions? Have you ever thought about it? You know, and it asks for climate responsible investments and introduces another tool that we can use. In addition to what we do advocacy on climate, we do various activities in our countries. So today we're introducing a new tool that you can use in addition to what you do. And this tool is what we'll discuss for the rest of the time. And now I'll ask Ivas to play the video, kindly. Ivas, you can, okay, good. Maybe extend.
The climate emergency is risking our children's future. They didn't cause it, but they'll pay the price. The decisions that will shape their world are in your hands. Ask yourself, where does your money go? Are your savings funding pollution or solutions for the climate? When financial decisions are harming the environment, speak up. Use your voice to demand transparency. Ask for climate-responsible investments. And when leaders don't act, use legal tools to hold them accountable. Change happens when people take a stand, when enough of us demand responsible banking. Industries shift, policies improve, and solutions accelerate. Legal tools give you the power to build a future that protects people. You have the tools to make a difference. Download the resource to learn more and take action today.
Good, thank you, Ivas. And then we can have the code that people can scan on the book itself and the resources that are there. It will be shared time and time again, the barcode, QR code, I mean. But this is the QR code for that video in itself only. And friends, we have been invited to this space of climate litigation in addition to what we do. And it is only right. Yesterday in plenary, we were asked to act, not only be theoretical. We were all there, were we? We heard of it. So we're introducing a very practical approach that we can take as the faith and youth leaders in our different countries and contexts. And so I will invite Frederique Seidel, who is my senior colleague, and she's the WCC senior program lead on climate and children. And she will share for 5 minutes on why churches, we are being invited to consider legal action. In addition to what we do, can we consider legal action to hold accountable those who are putting our future and our children's future at risk?
Thank you very
So,
much, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you. And before I start explaining why the WCC has started this initiative, let me also share that when we developed that handbook, Kevin and Jackie, who is online, have helped us anchor it in theological reflections. And Kevin had this idea to actually ask Faith Semva, the girl who wrote that poem, to help us with this project. And he asked her if she would agree to do a poem. And it is that poem which was published in the introduction of the handbook. And when we published it, The Guardian wrote an article. And 2 days after the launch, a musician from the UK contacted us to say that she was so moved by that poem and that a tune came to her heart when she was reading it. So she asked, could we ask for permission from this girl, Faith Semva, to turn it into a song? So I thought I'd just explain this to you so that you understand how a girl is the author, a girl who is deaf is actually the author of a song. And I encourage you all to use and share it after this workshop, and you will receive the links. Now, I'll tell you why we have engaged in this. And in order to explain it, I want to share with you the cover of the handbook. Can you see it well? Have a look. So what you see here is actually the illustration of a quote from a famous theologian, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a resistance fighter in the Second World War. Many of you may be familiar with Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And you know he has this quote, which is attributed to him.
Frederick, just pause for a minute. Our screen buffered. Just a second so that we have it on screen.
Thank you. But you can also take the hard copy, which I think is in the room, and have a look at the cover. And so there is this quote saying, if you see someone driving into a crowd of innocent bystanders, you cannot just pick up the dead and heal the wounded. You must take the steering wheel out of that driver's hands. And that is the quote by Dietrich Bonhoeffer we gave to a cartoonist, asking him if he could do an illustration for the cover of the handbook. So it was a bit controversial at the beginning because there's real situations today where we have really tragedies of people driving into crowds. But the young people we have been talking with for over now 7 years have told us that many of them is exactly the way they feel when they understand what science says about climate, and when they see what is really happening, they feel threatened in a similar way, even if the threat is in a bit more distant future, but for some it's immediate. So we have agreed to keep that cover. And why did we at all engage in this? Well, the Church's Commitments to Children is a program which was developed based on the question, how can churches best use their influence to improve children's lives? And so we have, over a year, done in-depth consultations with many church leaders, child rights experts, but also many children themselves. And it was the children who urged us to make intergenerational climate justice a key pillar of the WCC's child rights program. Here, actually, you see a photo of Eliane Wanjiku, who is from Kenya, and Fodai Bangura, who is from Sierra Leone, who held a conference led by children in Kenya on climate justice not so long ago. Children and young people like them were the ones who plead the WCC, if we really care about children, we must make climate solutions a core priority, because every single aspect of children's rights is threatened by global warming. That is much confirmed by UNICEF and science, as we see that 1 billion children live in countries with extreme vulnerability to the impacts of global warming. And almost every child is now exposed to at least one environmental or climate hazard. And tragically, over 88% of climate change-related diseases fall under the children under 5. As many of you may have experienced themselves, education is often disrupted by the consequences of global warming. In fact, 38 million children see their schooling disrupted every year as a result. And many children who have not been a victim of direct impacts are suffering mentally from just understanding the science. It's very heavy for children to understand what the IPCC, this leading experts report on climate, says. And therefore, studies by the Lancet document the very heavy phenomenon of eco-anxiety. So what did we do then at the WCC at the beginning? We were simply equipping churches to help children and youth turn their ideas into concrete projects and work with them to, for example, put solar panels on the roofs of churches or to go and speak to the mayors, many things which were empowering children to realize their ideas for climate solutions. But it was some young teenagers themselves who, at a big event we organized here for the Convention on the Rights of the Child, alerted me to say that they felt frustrated, saying that as long as the adults' banks' accounts are investing in fossil fuel expansion and fueling the very root causes of global warming, all their efforts, sacrificing weekends and free time, feels almost in vain. At the beginning, we were not experts on this at all, but we looked into the facts. And it showed that it's very true that the investments in fossil fuel expansion are huge, carry a huge responsibility, and we each, as organizations or churches, can do a lot. So we documented the champion churches among the members of WCC who have actually verified that their own financial service providers were not fueling the root causes of global warming. But we only found a handful. In fact, we showcased 12 of them in this handbook. But the reality is, well documented by the yearly report Banking on Climate Chaos, is that since the signing of the Paris agreements, the financing of fossil fuel expansion has reached almost $7 trillion. And here again, this girl from Kenya, who some of you may know of, Eliane Wanjiku, she contacted WCC and said, look, you seem to care about children. I want, with a group of children, to meet Emmanuel Macron. That was about 2 years ago when the president of France had convened global world leaders for the Global New Financing Pact Summit. And we told Eliane that it's not feasible for us to have children meet Emmanuel Macron at that event, but we agreed to facilitate the writing of a letter to world leaders and meet with the children near this event in Paris. And so we were there with children from Global North and Global South, helping them to prepare that letter. And Eliane Wanjiku insisted. She said, we need to meet with them in person. I said it's impossible, but look what happened. She actually just asked us to follow her. She looked every single security guard into the eyes in that big conference center. And suddenly we were standing there with just the heads of states, and security was letting us in. And in fact, Emmanuel Macron was quite proud to have photos of him taken with Eliane Wanjiku. We were not so happy that after that not much happened, and the pleas by the children in that letter were not responded to. So we are still working on that. And we have here Faith Sebva, who was helped to by Eliane to get a passport to go to the COP in Dubai. So yes, we decided to make this a central pillar of our child rights work, child protection through responsible banking choices. This is very important from our perspective to lift this far too heavy burden from children's shoulders. So we also wrote to Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, who agreed to support an appeal, which we did interfaith with Jewish and Muslim partners, an appeal in which we urge our own financial service providers to increase their ambition to align with the Paris Agreement. And a copy of that statement can be seen in this QR code as well. We also produced then toolkit called Save Children's Lives, Climate Responsible Banking Survival Guide, to simply ask help the churches to verify that their own pension funds and banks are investing in not sectors that harm children's lives. And then we shifted gears and we moved into the sphere of legal action. Why did we do that? Because we see that this is a very promising landscape of new laws. It's very possible to simply plea for the right to life of children by using the law. But many churches do not know yet about this very fast-moving legal landscape. And it was decided to help churches learn how to do that and to do it, for example, with young people and children themselves together. We also have amazing examples how there is recognition officially on how the investments in fossil fuel expansion are responsible for child rights violations. Here, for example, the Committee on the Rights of the Child has urged the Swiss government to be attentive to the harms caused by their banking sectors to children's lives. And on the right of this picture, you see late Pope Francis, who actually has received a letter from an Indian girl, Ridhima Pandey, who, with 13 years old, has also already submitted a complaint to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, urging them to help addressing the climate emergency. Isabel Vora, who is on the ground, will later explain to you more on the game changers, but I want to highlight especially the so-called General Comment 26 of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child. It's true that the title doesn't sound exciting at all, but it is the authoritative guidance on climate and children, which was issued about a year and a half ago, so it's brand new, and we need to raise awareness on it because if used, it can really move the needle on the protection of children's right to life. And there is the ecocide law, which is a very important movement we also work together with. Symbolically, the WCC, in addition to this, has submitted a request to the International Criminal Court to recognize the harms caused by investment in fossil fuel expansion and the disinformation on global warming. And you will hear soon in December, a new environmental crimes policy is about to be issued by the International Criminal Court, and this is going to be an important reference to build on as well. Yes, so Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who before he passed away has supported our project through a strong quote, he also said that people of conscience need to break their ties with corporations financing the injustice of climate change. So we will share the links on where to find the resources. And I'm very glad to hand back now to Kevin Miner and Isabel Vora, our moderators on the ground.
Thank you, Frederick. Thank you, Frederick, for taking us through that. And friends, as well, just to mention before I invite Isabel, the issues or this project or program is based on giving hope. Yes, when we see our news, when we see floods, we see always disaster all around us, and we feel helpless at times. Is it true? do we feel helpless? But this gives us the tools to act. So in July, if some of you followed the international ICJ, it's called International Court of Justice, issued an advisory on states have a legal obligation to prevent harm to the climate under international law. It means our states are actually obliged to follow that. So we have a standing in this. And as the churches, we have even a further standing because we are doing this to protect our people who come to our churches, you know. Dube in Zim, you know, you're doing this to protect your congregants. You've seen the impact that is there, is happening. Can we stop this? And this is what we're presenting today. And with that, I will invite Isabel Bora. She's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and Commissioner for Oaths, certified professional mediator. You've seen her around us. And she will help us on seeing how can we actually engage in climate litigation. Karibu, Isabel. Clap for her.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you, Frederick, for that wonderful presentation on the handbook. As you have heard, and I think you've heard my colleague talking about the climate emergency and why it is very important to all of us to take a keen interest on. So I am just going to delve into the handbook a bit more, but majorly looking at the legal tools that we can actually use to bring these climate injustice enablers to book. If you can have the slide presentation, please. As that is being put up, how many of us have heard about climate litigation? Anyone? Wow. What can you tell me about? Yes? You can just. Climate litigation. 5 minutes. So 1 minute.
Okay. Litigation. My first time to climate litigation. Why? Can you formulate the question? What litigation is? Okay. Let someone be.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I've had climate litigation from Kevin and you and Jackie McKenna. But just for the benefit of our colleagues here, I think climate litigation refers to the legal ways and legal strategic channels that can be pursued to ensuring that climate action is actually achieved to that extent. Thank you.
Nice. Very good. Any other? Yes. A lady, we have to balance the gender.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a legal practitioner in my country, Nigeria, and climate litigation is still emerging in Nigeria. But basically, it's about how you can use the law to regulate issues that have to do with climate change, global warming, and how to stop pollution of the environment, how to encourage things like recycling, reusing, and saying no to litter. Basically, in Nigeria, climate litigation has to do with how we can make our climate and our environment clean and better and healthy, and hold those who are not doing so to books. For example, in Nigeria, if you want to open a shop in certain areas, you must get some form of certification from a particular group to show that your environment is clean and is in regulation with the climate laws. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. Could you clap for her? Both of you are right. And as you have said, they're just legal actions brought against the climate change enablers. And all these, they're just, the main issue here is to address the climate science, policy, or law. But now, away from climate litigation, with climate litigation, the aim is normally to enforce international commitments. We have things like the Paris Agreement, which you have heard my colleague talk about. We have stopping harmful projects, as she has said. waste. We have most target companies are coal plants, oil drilling, and then we seek accountability and remedies for those who have been harmed by climate impacts. But now, what the handbook is trying to introduce is strategic litigation. So when we go to strategic litigation, next slide, Kevin. The handbook now focuses more on strategic litigation, and why strategic litigation is because in climate litigation, what we have come to see is that the main actors are either financiers or the fossil fuel companies. So those are our main those are our main target parties when it comes to strategic litigation. And why is that so? Because the two of them, in conjunction with each other, produce the highest amount of GCG gases. So if it's not the fossil fuel companies themselves, it's the financiers who keep financing them over and over again to do their activities. So that is why it is strategic. And why is it strategic? Because we are looking to establish new rights, environmental rights. We have the right to a safe and healthy environment. Then two, it will force the governments to strengthen climate action. How will we do that? Most financiers are linked to the government, right? Most of us here, I'm pretty sure we have banks in our respective countries, and these banks are always linked to our central banks, and they are regulated, right, by the government. So that is why we want to target, one, the financiers, because if we can target the policy that changes the finances, then we strongly believe that we can strengthen the government regulation in terms of climate change. Then three, it's strategic because it will be able to hold corporations accountable for emissions while encouraging them to invest in environmental friendly projects. The main aim here is not to tell these fossil fuel companies that they cannot or they should stop conducting business. No. What we're trying to do is shift their attention from conducting business that is geared towards emission of GCG gases towards a clean business. That is the main aim here. So we will be forcing them to at the very least change their mode of doing and then encourage new and environmental friendly practices. Okay. All right. So we can go to the next slide. Okay. So when we talk about strategic litigation, we have had emerging new human rights dimensions, especially in regards to the environment sector. Before, the main inherent rights were right to life, right to dignity, and those were considered to be like they're the top tier rights. But now what we are trying to do is also integrate environmental rights, to right to health, to right to mental health, right to education, and right to development. Why is that? Because when we look at the effects of climate change, if we take a look at floods, just a good example of floods, if there's flooding somewhere, there's a likelihood that a life will be lost, one. There's a likelihood that someone's right to education will be disrupted somehow along the line, right? And three, where there's flooding, there's also a likelihood of health risks. We have diseases like typhoid, like cholera that come up with such instances. So, wow, okay. So that is why we are trying to link these rights to human rights so that they hold more weight even before courts and before tribunals per se. All right. So another thing that we would like to address with the strategic litigation is when we are talking about children and as agents of accountability. The main people here that we are trying to fight basically is us as youths and the next generation, because the impacts of climate change unfortunately always affect the next generation. And likelihood in 100 years' time, most of us will not be here, right? Okay, maybe some will be here, depending on God's plan, but most of us won't be here. So that is why the target is children. And now it's always assumed that children most of the times don't have a locus standi or cannot stand before the court to address their rights or to claim that a right has been infringed. But now in this concept, we're looking at the future generation, children who are yet to be born. So how do we approach now? How do you approach a tribunal or a court to say that I am here to complain or to challenge the rights of someone who is yet to be born. So to address that challenge, we have had cases that have actually brought about the local standard, enabling us to challenge and to bring to court for the future generation. And one of the major cases that, okay, all right. So one of the major cases that has been developed in that field is OPOSA. It's OPOSA, just as I'm pronouncing it, OPOSA. It's a Philippines case. And what had happened was that the children sued, again, it's children through other people, sued to stop logging concessions. So the logging concessions were actually stopped, and it created a principle called intergenerational equity, meaning that people can now go to court and stop harmful acts that are going to affect not just this generation, but the future generation as well. We are together until that point? Okay. So with this strategy, there are always there are other legal tools that are emerging, even through strategic litigation. One, we've talked about the intergenerational equity, which now allows us to actually challenge for the rights of the next generation. I think the other concept that has been talked about even in the handbook is on turning off the taps. When we are targeting these companies, these financiers, what do we mean by turning off the taps? We mean that we are trying to regulate their finances from where they are, from the inception, basically. So if you are able to close the funding, will these fossil companies be able to continue what they're doing in these countries? If you have experienced working in oil companies or these big corporations, most of them get their resources from funding, right? And from big financiers. Some even are financed by even World Bank and things like that, right? So if we try and go back to these financiers and tell them to actually to try and change their financing towards environmental friendly what are they called, projects, that will help us actually change everything from the conception. So that is what we are talking about, turning off the taps. And then the other dimension is about the human rights. We have already looked at that and how it affects, climate change affects human rights, and also how we can now frame these questions as human rights questions and not as environmental rights, and see them as actual pressing matters. We can go to the next slide. So another concept is the special remedies. In Philippines, there was a writ of Kalikasan, which was developed long time ago. And this writ allows citizens to challenge large-scale environmental harm. So for them, they were allowed, and I think it was in the 90s, and the courts allowed them to challenge any harmful practices that are at a large scale. So we are using this as an actual precedent to help us now also be able to challenge other large-scale companies that are trying to come up with harmful practices or just come up with anything that harms the environment on a large scale. Another concept is corporate accountability. So many of us have heard that companies now have a CSR, corporate social responsibility, right? So we try and make sure that through that corporate social responsibility, they are able to reduce their emissions worldwide. And that is the target. Because when we are targeting these companies, we are not just targeting a company that is local here or a company that is local in another country. We are targeting the whole mapping. If, let's say, it's an oil company, assuming it's Shell, the target is not just Shell, let's say, in Nigeria. The target is Shell at a global level. So if we manage to challenge the court to actually try and mandate them to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, which was done, it would be enforced worldwide, not on one scale or not on one continent and leaving out the other continent, which is why this concept is actually a very good concept. Then there's the Children's Rights Innovation, the UN General Comment, number 26, which again affirms the state's duty to safeguard the rights of children in climate action. As I had said before, the aim of strategic litigation, again, is to force the government to actually enforce laws and policies that enhance climate friendly environment. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so even as I'm talking about strategic litigation, I don't want it to feel like it's a foreign concept that has not been tried out in either Africa or in other continents. So I have already given an example of the Oposa case. I will just give a few examples of strategic litigation cases that have actually worked. I'll start here in Kenya. There was the Save Lamu case, and the main thing that was being challenged were the coal plant that was being built in Lamu. And the tribunal managed to reverse their licenses. So this plant was given licenses to actually open up a company in Lamu. Lamu is an island, so it's how do I say it? It's a historical site actually. Yes. So you can imagine it's an island, a historical site. So people there are actually indigenous, and then they wanted to bring now a coal company there. So you can imagine the type of harm it would have had on the residents, right? So they challenged this, and the beauty of it is that some of the people who actually challenged it were faith actors and other civil societies. And a good thing is that it was actually reversed. Another case, we have the Serac versus Nigeria in 2001, where the same issue, it was also an issue of environmental pollution. Sorry, we can go to slide 7 so that we are on the same page. Thank you. So we have the Serac versus Nigeria in 2001, where the issue was still environmental pollution and human rights violation. And again, it was found that there was breach to life, health, and environment. As you can see here, there's still a close link between the rights to health and environment and the right to life. So this is what we are trying to actually link. Right to health, right to life, to climate change. And then I've already talked about the Save Lamu project. We can go to the next slide. Other examples, we have the Greenpeace Africa and Earthlife Africa versus South Africa. Again, as you can see, all these examples are giving, there's something in common. It's coal, right? We have coal and oil. That is why it is really important for us to see that what WCC or what the handbook is trying to gear towards is very strategic, because it's actually managing to target the specific key contributors to climate change. All right? So here in this case, we see that, again, the issue was the coal project ignored climate impact, and then court, again, invalidated their permits, giving more weight to right to health and right to, again, climate justice. Then we have Africa Center for Justice versus Sudan. Then here it advanced land and environmental justice. We have Oposa. I have talked about Oposa a lot because it's a very key precedent in strategic litigation. We can go to the next slide. So as you can see, all these cases are specific cases, aside from the Oposa case, that have been mitigated and litigated in Africa. So it's doable. It's not a foreign concept. It's not a concept that has just been flown out of nowhere. It's a concept that has been tested and tried and has been seen to yield results. So we hope that in the long run, this concept will still continue to yield good results to us and to the future generations as well. Again, we also want to recognize that, you know, coming out and speaking against either governments or these big companies comes at a risk, right? Yes, because most of these companies are financed by who? By the government, right? Or you will find a good example here in Kenya, you'll find that the political figures have a big stake in these companies. So how do you then approach it? At WCC, we want to emphasize that we want to look at the low risk tools, not high risk. What do we mean by low risk? Low risks tools allow us to advocate without going to court. Yes, there's the issue, there's the concept of strategic litigation, but before you go there, you can always engage in low-risk tools. Your church can always conduct fact-finding missions and collect evidence or collect testimonies. Go to these places where flooding is happening. Talk to them, collect evidence where you can gather, you can take photos, have interviews with them, and just talk to them and understand what exactly has been affected to them, what rights have been affected, you know, and how long have they been experiencing this. That way, even when assuming WCC comes to you and asks you to volunteer, then you have concrete information and concrete evidence that can help us then proceed to the next level. Then we have, of course, public letters and advisories. Kevin has talked about an advisory that just came out the other day. So advisories are still a very low-risk legal tool that can be used. And then we can always partner with legal institutions that are always able and willing to help. And also in the partnering, you can also always partner with, now here, WCC, right? That is willing to help and willing to assist in such instances of climate justice. So even as you're doing so, how do you then come in as the church to protect the people, or these people who are going there, or the climate activists who are coming to you as a partner to challenge the companies and all that? And you can just, again, as I have said, low risk, even though we are looking at low risk options, it doesn't mean that it's risk free. It may still come at a risk. So what we're doing is we're urging churches to provide a shelter. Let me call it a shelter, but to provide a safe space. Actually, that's what, to provide a safe space to these people. And not just that, by also educating them and informing them that there's an avenue that can be followed, or there's an avenue that can be pursued that is low risk and that can actually yield results. So as you go out there, you have a plethora of audience with you, of congregations. The same people who are affected by climate change, you have them in your congregations. And ironical enough, you might also have the other people on the other side, on the government side or on the company sides, come to your churches as well. So please use these spaces that you have, or this leverage that you have, as a safe space and also as an education tool for this congregation, so that you can be a middle ground in if there's any political unrest or if there's any issues that might come up. Yes. Yeah, and then again, we must speak collectively and also, I think, work collectively. What we want to achieve is that we want to make sure that we are moving as a group. Everyone here, not this church or any other church. WCC is looking to recruit people as a group. It doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what is happening. As long as you have a valid claim and a valid case, we take it as a group and move forward and try to make sure that justice is served against the financial actors and also against the companies, and make sure that the future generation are set in the next generation. Yeah. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so the final word, as I have said, as you go back home, please remember the only way we can assist, again, as a legal profession, evidence is key. Evidence is thorough. So we need that evidence. In any way you can assist us, please make sure that you take those photos, make sure that even as you're engaging in your campaigns, even as you're engaging in the civic education that you might be going out there to do, ensure that you collect or gather any evidence that you can, because that then becomes memory and it becomes justice. So when we stand together, we can protect the environment and protect everyone else and future generations to come. Yes, and I think that is it from my presentation. Thank you. Allow me to now introduce Jackie before we go to the Q&A. If you have your questions, please just save them aside. My colleague will be running to another meeting, so we need her to present first, and then we will come back to the Q&A. That's fine? All right, sawa, sawa. Allow me to welcome Reverend Jacqueline McKenna. She's online, but yes, please clap for her, clap for her. Yes.
Thank you so much, Isabel. I'll continue from where Isabel has stopped and ask, how can churches or young people join the Hope for Children initiative through campaigning? So I have four ways in which we can all plug in through campaigning, apart from what Isabella said. And that the first one is engaging in contextual Bible study. Contextual Bible study is a group activity in which people read the Bible together in ways that connect with their daily lives. It invites everyone, including young people, to share their experiences, such as the effects of climate emergency on their communities or even their personal effects, and see to how the Bible speaks to these issues. And in contextual Bible study, the group's social, economic, and environmental challenges guide the discussion, making the scripture feel real and vital. This method encourages open discussions, group decision-making, and action. And as Isabella said, we are seeking for a group. It's a group thing. We need to do it as a group. Therefore, contextual Bible study will help us to discuss together and make a decision as a group. And it also enables action, such as supporting legal efforts to protect the environment. And for the Hope for Children initiative, we are developing, as we said earlier, we are developing a contextual Bible study guide that helps turn Bible lessons into practical support for climate justice and for lawsuits that safeguard children's and young people's futures. And once the guide is out, it will be shared to all of us. Then another thing is pulpit messaging. I know when we hear about pulpit, we think of sermons. And I want to explain to us today, what is a sermon? A sermon is more than a summary of Bible stories. It is a powerful message that addresses today's problems and real life issues, such as climate emergency, what we are talking now. In advocating for climate justice, sermons can explain how God's call to care for creation, which is biblically rooted, and you will see that in the handbook, and how helping those in need can lead to actions like supporting court cases for environmental protection. Church workshops also can explore these ideas further, assisting people to understand the connection between faith and legal change. And the Hope for Children initiative actually encourages creating sermons that urge support for strategic litigation. And the aim is to inspire as many sermons as possible focused on climate justice, motivating churches to join the campaign for a healthier planet to protect not only today's youth, but also future generations. Sermons are not only preached by faith leaders, even young people can do that. And I know many of us have been involved in our churches, in our faith settings, in preaching. So another thing, quickly go through is worship integration. That is our liturgies in our worship places. We should make worship services more meaningful by adding elements that highlight climate justice and protection of children and youth. This is by using responsive readings and prayers from the Bible that focus on creation stewardship and standing up for what is right. As Desmond Tutu said, if you are neutral in instances of injustice, then you've chosen the side of the oppressor. Let us not be neutral in our worship. Our worship should reflect prophetic witness and mission. Therefore, creating prayers that call for speaking, truth to power without mincing our words and guarding the vulnerable, as described in the Hope for Children handbook, is what is required in our worship places for our churches to be and continue to be prophetic voices in our societies. And in the worship liturgies, I would urge the young people who are listening to request their faith leaders to include short justice moments, maybe after offertory or maybe after communion, to discuss these themes, depending on how various confessions design their worship program. This approach blends faith with action, helping the congregation connect worship to the campaign for legal efforts that ensure a safe and secure future for young people. This is very important so that this information can reach as many people at the grassroots as possible. And you know the power of a liturgy, you know the power of a pulpit. Once people hear it from the pulpit, then you will start thinking about it, and this is how we will turn justice into action. The other thing, and the last one, is becoming potential allies. Churches and young people do not work alone. They can join larger groups to make a bigger difference in issues like climate litigation. For the Hope for Children initiative, this means building partnerships through talks between young people and older people. Youth bring fresh ideas from climate activism, while the elders offer historical and faith-based insights. Holding joint prayers and events with experts in law and environment to explain the legal processes clearly is also very important. And Frederick mentioned this case, and let me mention it again, which is a very good example, the Juliana versus the US case, where 21 young people aged between 10 to 21 sued the government for harming their rights through climate emergency. Therefore, they became allies, and this was possible. So becoming allies, churches can support this kind of work, unite in prayer and action, and ensure that the world is habitable for all, as you can see in the slide that is displayed there. Thank you so much. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for that wonderful presentation. We'll now have a quick
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Gambori Pai Godwill from South Sudan. I have like 2 questions. Otherwise, I really appreciate the work that you have done. It has been an impressive presentation. My first question, however, is how can we help regions, more especially the areas where coal and oil production takes place? Because in my country where I come from, this is the main income of the government, and in the recent years, we've experienced women giving birth to children with some missing parts, and discoveries were found out that this was due to the production in the area. So that is the first question. And the second question is, what are some of the ways we can help people whose environments are swampy and experiencing flooding every year? Also in my country, majority of the country is swampy. Like every year we experience flooding. Over 70,000, 140,000 people are displaced yearly, and it causes disputes because most displaced are cattle keepers, and when they move from their area to the safer side of the country, it causes disputes because they occupy the lands of the farmers, and then they go enter into disputes and war. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm Anthony Blaze. I'm with the Interreligious Council of Kenya. Mine first is to appreciate the presentation on litigation. I've been battling with this idea of litigation as an African. I'm an African. Because yes, it is the in thing about holding people accountable. Nigerians on what happened with oil, Kenya with the coal plant that you have given Isabella. But I look at the Bible, Maina. The Bible tells me that before I take somebody to court, I have to go to a council of elder, call your brother, and if he refuses, then you go to court. Because we have been told that taking people to court, it's very, very costly. More so in Africa. court cases last forever and ever and ever. We started the Lamu call with my learned friend here in 2018, 2019 when it came up, Maina and Isabella. It is just last week that the tribunal threw it away. How much was spent by Katiba Institute, by Natural Justice, by the State of Lamu? It was so much. So I know litigation is the way to go, but the African way tells us not to take people to court. It tells us that we go under a tree, the Council of Elders, and I know there's no justice found under trees. I know true justice is never found. So are there other ways? Are there other ways that we can handle this in an African way? And is this litigation another imported concept to Africa? Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Please, we'll have another Q&A, so you two can start the next one, okay? Then we can have the two. Yeah.
We have a question online also, Kevin and Isabel. We have a question online from Tim Ikezo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emmanuel, and I'm from Ghana. I first of all want to thank you for your presentation. I have a question on strategic litigation. You told us how court cases can lead to long-term change in African countries. I want to ask that first, how are you able, please, are you a lawyer? Okay, so how are you able to identify cases that lead to these kind of things? How are you able to identify that this case is a specific strategic litigation question? And then the second one is that what partnership are we having with lawyers and scientists and other people to help us to fight this litigation? Thank you very much. Sorry.
I stand here, I come closer. Okay. Thank you very much for that presentation. I have two questions, so let me make them very, very quick. Do you have an example of, oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. Kat. My name is Irene Sebastian from Kenya. I also represent Climate Yes. So do you have a church, whether it's in Kenya or anywhere else, that's already working that can be a benchmark for others so that we just get to know how exactly they are doing it? And then another question is, I see some buildings here in Nairobi and they allow effluents into, when it rains, when it's not raining, there's just water. I think Nairobians, you've seen it. And I've been to the county government office and I told them, I see this, what can we do about it? And they're always like, when we go to, we get them and then we tell them to stop, but there isn't really anything that they are doing directly. So as an individual or as a church group, is there something that we can do about it? What would be the litigation process of, let's say, if I wanted to not prosecute, but take to court an owner of a building that is allowing effluents into our systems or into the roads and rivers around where we are living? Yeah.
Thank you, friends. So Bella will answer some, and I'll invite Frederick to answer one on other avenues, as asked by Anthony, which actually I can leave this copy here. She will speak to page 17, okay, to it, yeah. And then some questions I think will be answered in the examples that will be shared by our three next speakers as well. They'll share examples of what you're speaking about. They have been involved in, and they're actually doing it. So, yeah.
I think there was an online question.
Yes, from Tim Ikeza.
Thank you. Do I have the floor?
Yes.
Go ahead.
How are you? Thank you for the great discussions and great input. And the young people who are in this meeting. My name is Timothy Ekesa. I work for children, but I'm also one of the 18 members who are members of the Committee on the Rights of the Child. We are 7 of us from Africa, from Morocco, Mauritania, Morocco, Ethiopia, Niger, Togo, Zambia, and Kenya. And I was so impressed by the comment that you made on the comments you are making on General Comment 26. Is one of the things that our committee will look at very much. And I want just to encourage the young people. I saw in the presentation about the presentation you made, but I just wanted to share with you that we have opportunities through the committee, through the periodic reporting, which I made every 5 years for every country. And Kenya, for example, Kenya have submitted their report. It might be discussed next year or next year because we have a backlog of reports. And other countries, Tanzania is also on the way being discussed. And I think as young people, I know we have the optional protocol on complaint mechanism. It's a third optional protocol, which gives you young people an opportunity just to be able to also submit your comments when the issues of violation against climate change are there for you. You can be able to send the comments yourself to the committee, and the committee can be able to look at them. Then the other opportunity we have the General Day of Discussion, which takes place every year. Again, it's an opportunity where you have a chance to be able to come and share. We look at thematic areas every year, and the climate change is one of the big areas that we shall focus on. So I want to encourage you to be able to also share some of those comments with us. And I'm so impressed to see many African children discussing climate change because it's a big issue for us. I'm a Christian too. I'm an Anglican. My Archbishop, I think you know the Green Anglican. We are really doing a lot on climate change. And just leave you a quote from my Archbishop, a very interesting quote about climate change. He says, "It is a waste to waste your waste. It is a waste to waste your waste." Yes, it is a waste to waste your waste. Very interesting. I know that we throw out so many things, and we are being encouraged to look at the issues of the strategies of R. Make sure that we refuse things that don't work with us. We reduce on some of the things that we don't need. We reuse, we repair, we refurbish, we reject, we recover, and we rethink some of the things that we've been doing. So I think I'm so impressed by this. We joined this meeting courtesy of CAC Nakshe, Church in Action, who are our partners who support CAC on issues of child labor. So I'm so impressed with all the presenters, and thank you for the meeting.
All right. Thank you so much. I will try and answer or not answer some of them because I know the next speakers will touch on some of the things that are going to be, or some of the questions that you have asked. How are we able to merit which case is legible? Allow me to answer this in the WCC perspective as opposed to a legal perspective. So for WCC, we have a template that allows churches to then give their details and the details of the cause of action that they want to bring. Facts, what have they gathered so far? And just to touch on what he was asking, one of the questions is, have you actually sought any other legal remedy before coming to WCC? So again, we also, as I had said initially, we encourage other options before coming to this option, before litigation, that is. So there's a template, and we will share with them, right? Yes, we'll share with them on that. So that will guide on the merit. It's not basically a merit. I don't want to call it a merit because it would mean that we hold others higher and others less. No, it's just a fact-finding questionnaire that then enables us to see how we can help and what is an emergency and what can maybe be improved. Okay? And then do we have a chat that is already working, and how does one deal? Okay, do we have a chat that is already working with WCC? Kevin, do you want to answer that question? Okay.
Would you like me to answer that question?
Yes.
So, in fact, the whole initiative is inspired by an ongoing case which was led by the Swiss Interchurch Aid, Hex et Pair, about a cement company which has not done enough in their climate policy and the harms caused by that cement company to fishermen in Indonesia. So the actual plaintiffs are fishermen in Indonesia who have lost everything, their livelihoods, as a result of global warming. And held accountable is that Swiss cement company. And yes, Hex et Pair, that Swiss Interchurch Aid organization, has inspired this initiative a lot and helps us also in the accompaniment of this. We have now one case which is being prepared, but it's still confidential. It's a UK church, and it's about financial institution in the UK, but the harms caused to communities in Colombia. We are also in contact with the Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace in New Jersey in the US. This is a congregation of Catholic sisters which has filed a shareholder action about a bank in the US. And we are in contact with many others who are very advanced on this. But yes, so the vision is to see a proliferation of lawsuits by people of faith. And we also hope to have at least one case developed interfaith with partners of other faith. Back to you. We are not hearing you, Isabel or Kevin. If
Can
you
you
can
hear
just
me
make
now?
sure. Yes, thank you.
All right. So I wanted to ask you to address the question on if there are other avenues aside from just going to court to address this issue of climate emergency.
Oh, yes, of course. In fact, we are aware that lawsuits as such take far too long compared to the small window of time we have according to science to halt the ongoing increase of CO2 emissions. So I want to first underline that everything which accompanies this, the communication work, advocacy, and worship by churches to accompany the legal action, will be as important as the decision by the court itself. And we have many examples where decisions by companies have been reverted before they even reached the courtroom. That is our goal, as we need to see results much faster than legal action takes. And this is not at all like to reduce any of the other efforts. So advocacy and Bible studies and worship and everything else which churches do for climate justice is complemented by this new avenue. But it is not in any way to say that it's either or. We need all approaches at this stage.
Thank you, Frederic. Please allow me to leave for now the questions on environment and oil and the sewage issue and water issue, because my colleague will be coming in to talk about real life examples that have been also that they have been actively participating in. So maybe after that, I hope that your questions will be answered, and I believe that she'll answer them. With that, allow me to welcome Hilary Tendai, who is also in the legal profession from Zimbabwe, and she's part of the Zimbabwean Environmental Law Association, ZILA, to just give us a few interventions on examples from their side. She's online. Hilary, if you can hear me, you can begin.
Hi, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, wherever we are. Just confirm if you can hear me.
Online, yes. How about on, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much to my co-presenters for giving such a good background, and they covered a lot about climate litigation and strategic litigation as it relates to the handbook that we are discussing today. My name is Hilary Mugota. I'm a legal officer with the Zimbabwe Environmental Law Organization, formerly known as the Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association. we are an organization that focuses on environmental protection, natural resources governance, and I mainly focus on children's rights and youth programming. So without wasting much time, I'm going to be focusing mainly on some of the avenues that we can partake on in terms of climate litigation and also synergies with some of the work that we do here at CELO. So you find that climate litigation, it's a fairly new concept to most of our jurisdictions. And when it comes to litigating on climate change cases, it comes as a case-to-case basis and also looking at the context of a country to country. So when you're looking at climate litigation, there are a number of avenues that you can explore. The first one is taking a human rights-based approach. I think Advocate has mentioned this before, to say that climate litigation and climate rights, really, they are not so popular, especially in the African context. But that doesn't mean that violations are not happening. Therefore, we can take a human rights-based approach in approaching climate litigation. That is, we can look at constitutional rights, we can look at the rights to a healthy environment, we can look at issues of right to life, right to dignity, and equality. Another avenue also that we could consider when you're looking at climate change litigation is to challenging projects, developmental projects that have an impact on climate as well as the environment. Here I gave an example of fossil fuel projects. These are some of the projects that we can interrogate in our litigation efforts and see the impacts that they are putting on the climate and how best we can litigate around this. And then the other is to holding governments to account, because in as much as you're talking of financiers and also private players within the climate space, we cannot then ignore the fact that most of our governments are the ones that approve of these projects to be done in our different communities, in our countries. Hence, it is the government's duty to make sure that the citizens' rights are protected and are not violated at the expense or at the favor of developmental projects. So we really have to hold our governments to account for inaction, especially for failing to implement climate policies or to uphold environmental laws or protect citizens from climate impacts. I'll give an example of Zimbabwe. We have been lobbying a lot about climate change justice. We have been doing a lot of work as an organization on climate justice, climate equity issues around mitigation and adaptation. And as a major result, Zimbabwe considered having a climate change law. It was gazetted recently. There are consultations that are happening. And for us, it is a major result because it's a result of the work that we have been doing towards climate change rights and also environmental rights that are linked to climate change. So you see that our litigation efforts, they start from your lobbying, they start from your policy lobbying up to a point where then you say, we are taking company ABC to court based on this violation. I will also look at leveraging on international or legal frameworks. I think Advocate touched a lot on this, but to just say it is one of the bases that you need to look into when you're lodging or a claim on climate change. So you have to look into your legal frameworks internationally. We have your Paris agreements, your UNFCCC as a governing body. We have a lot of policies that are coming up. I think Frederick mentioned about the General Comment number 26. It's a very good initiative in protecting children's rights, especially as it relates to the environment and climate change. All right. And then another avenue that, especially in Zimbabwe, has been quite helpful in terms of holding companies to account, especially developmental companies. So in Zimbabwe, you would find that there's a lot of mining activities that takes place, and we cannot dispute the fact that mining also has an impact on our climate. So how then do you utilize the avenues within the environmental space to hold these companies to account? We have what we call environmental impact assessments. I think in some jurisdictions it's called environmental social impact assessments, which is a process that every company that is aiming to do a project is expected to do, so that it can clear out the impacts that the project is going to have on the environment, on the social lives of the people, how they are going to mitigate those impacts, and also how are they going to address any violations that comes from their operations. So this is one of the avenues that we have been using, especially in Zimbabwe, to track whether these companies are not violating the environment or not. But you see that if a country does not have a legislation to support, for example, we did not have a climate change law in Zimbabwe. So in as much as we pushed for environmental aspects, that aspect of climate change was missing. So it's one of the aspects that you have to look out in your jurisdiction, especially if you have a climate change law, to see if these impact assessments are done, and also are they taking into account impacts of climate change on the people. So that's one other avenue that you can look into when you're talking about climate litigation. And then now, how then can the church, especially the church, the young people, I'm sure we're speaking to a group of young people within a church affiliation, how can we use our congregations, and also how can we utilize on the opportunities that we have in our groups to make sure that we advocate for and litigate on climate change? One of the speakers talked of intergenerational justice. I will not ponder much on that one. What I want to speak to is the use of public interest litigation. It is one of the key aspects that are very critical and crucial when you're talking about climate change litigation. Why do I say so? Because when you're taking a case on climate litigation, it's not benefiting an individual. Most of the cases is benefiting a group of children, a community, a country, or a certain tribe. So then it's important for you as young groups, as young people, to then seek to hold governments and corporations to account for their contributions to climate change and their failure to protect the environment and human rights. In this way, you are not only doing this litigation step for an individual, but you're now benefiting a group of people, especially the vulnerable groups. They'll benefit a lot from public interest litigation. And then also we could consider initiating or joining cases on challenging approvals of projects. It's not always the case that you have to be the initiator of a case in a court of law, but sometimes going as a group to support an initiative that is already in the courts can also get you a lot of traction in terms of your advocacy on climate change litigation. And then another key aspect that you can consider, and that will then make you a very useful group, is becoming an amicus curiae, or a friend of the court. So what a friend of the court does is that they support cases that are already within the court role, providing either moral, ethical, scientific arguments, or even evidence to support a case. So this is something we can do as young people within different communities. Isabel talked about documentation, documenting whatever is happening in our communities, taking pictures, taking videos. This can count as evidence that can be considered from an amicus curiae. And why do I say we can go in as an amicus curiae? As a group of young people within a church is already a recognized institution. So we already have that ground to say we want to support this case based on our affiliations as a church to serve the community. So that's another area or an avenue that we can also explore when it comes to climate litigation. And then I think earlier during remarks by Dr. Matata, he mentioned that litigation is not always about, violent confrontations with corporates, with the government. There is a lot that can be considered when we're talking of litigation. Remember, we talked about the human rights approach. So we're not talking about the human rights approach. There's a lot that comes into account. Firstly, the issue of capacity building and legal literacy on its own. It can count as an effort towards climate litigation. Remember, we are litigating cases for the benefit of communities. Some of these communities might not have the knowledge when it comes to climate change law, the basis for climate litigation. So that's where we come in and bridge the gap to raise the capacity of these communities so that whatever claims they take to the courts, it has got a legal basis, and also it is a well-researched case by all members. And then we can also assist through case identification. It's not always the case that you have to go to court yourselves, but sometimes identifying a case. How do we identify a case? Issue of documentation. We document the impacts of climate change, whether it's increased droughts, it's issues of flooding, loss of livelihoods. All those can be documented so that we can identify a case. Where does our climate litigation case lie? Does it lie on the right to life? Does it lie on the right to food? Does it lie on the right to a safe and clean environment? So that's another avenue that you can also explore when you're thinking of climate litigation. And then I think Isabel talked about strategic litigation. I'll skip this one. And then we have lastly, the issue of joint advocacy campaigns. I know as young people, we might be very, ambitious to say as a group of 10 young people, we managed to take company ABCD to court. But sometimes for you to get traction and also sometimes for you to win some of these cases, you need to join forces with others. You can actually see that in the online room, there are lots of organizations that I even got to know of today. Even in the physical room, there are other groups, different affiliations that I got to know today. We can join forces when we want to take a certain company to court. Why? Because we are talking of a human rights issue, which is climate change, and it has a lot of impact, especially on the children and us, the young generation. So it is key for us to join forces when we're looking at climate litigation, as this can help us a lot. I want to close by giving an example of two cases that we once interacted with here in Zimbabwe. The first one, it was a community water alliance case versus the Environmental Management Agency in Zimbabwe. This case focused on the right to access information regarding an environmental impact assessment document. And this document is quite critical as it has all the information that I mentioned earlier to say, if a company is coming in, what is their project going to harm in terms of the environment and the social aspect. So this case, the communities, they argued that the restriction by the company and the EMA to give the communities access to this document, it violated on their right to participation in the assessment process of this project, meaning that if there were climate change impacts of this project, the community had been denied access to this critical information for them to interrogate. So the case enhanced the issues of transparency and access so that they can build up on climate litigation issues in Zimbabwe. And then the last one is not a case per se, but it's a result of the advocacy initiatives that we did here as the Zimbabwe Environmental Law Organization,
Hilary?
which is the Climate Change Management Bill.
Hilary,
So
can you hear me?
Yes.
You have 2 minutes actually to wrap up because of time.
Okay. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So the Climate Change Management Bill, it is quite a critical piece of legislation that we have been spearheading here at the Zimbabwe Environmental Law Organization for some time. And this year we managed to get traction. It has been gazetted and public consultations are ongoing. So you'd see that litigation, it comes in different forms. And one of the critical ones is to influence policy, as most of our legal judgments, they are based on policy. I think I will end here and give the time back to Isabel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hilary. Can give a round of applause. Thank you so much for your presentation and for the great work you're doing at Zilla. Now, if you will allow me, I will like to invite
In fact, if Jasper Bloem could speak next, that would be great because he has to leave in 15 minutes. Jasper Bloem from Milieudefensie in the Netherlands, who will share with us an example, a very powerful example with a focus on a financial actor. Over to you, Jasper. I think you use your slides, right? Normally you should be able to access.
Yes, should I share?
Yeah, I think it's better if you go at your rhythm.
So first of all, thanks for having me this afternoon. It's been very interesting to listen in to all the examples which we heard, and I'm just checking for the presentation mode, and I can't find it. So I'm just gonna go like this, if you don't mind. I hope everyone can see the slides well. As mentioned, I'm of Friends of the Netherlands. And we have been working on climate litigation for quite a while already. And I will talk about why we think this is a very good way to get communities and get the voice of the youth heard vis-a-vis large corporations and their activities. I will first share a little bit about our legal tactic, then on why we are currently engaged with the financial on its climate policies, and then the wider impacts I think the cases have. So when it comes to the legal tactic, one of the things we noted that there was what we call, or what Professor John Ruggie calls a governance gap. Multinational companies, many of which are headquartered in the Netherlands, are actually not adequately regulated. And we need climate action from multinationals to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement, the 1.5 degrees global warming maximum. But they're actually not a partner in the treaty. So even though corporations are necessary to achieve the goals, they are not bound by the treaty. But luckily, within the law and in many legal systems, but also in the Dutch legal system, there is an open norm which basically boils down to thou shall not endanger people. So as a citizen of the Netherlands or as a corporation in the Netherlands, it is not allowed for you to bring to other people in danger. And the argument we have developed in our court cases is that climate change is such a danger and it will impact on human rights, as several of the previous speakers have already mentioned as well. So that means corporations have a duty of care to address climate change, to avoid their contribution to climate change. And with this legal tactic, we've started discussions with Shell, the major oil company. That court litigation case is currently at the Dutch Supreme Court. And we have also previously already been engaged in litigation with Shell around its activities in Nigeria and the damage they did in Nigeria. And we have won that case on behalf of the communities there. And I think that shows why it's so interesting to use this litigation to address multinational corporations, because they have activities all over the globe. So it's something where we from the Netherlands, by pursuing a Dutch multinational corporation, can actually prevent damages both in the Netherlands, but also, for example, in Nigeria or in other parts of the world. And I think that's a great opportunity for an NGO, to come to stand for communities and to better their lives. So then the question is why as I mentioned, we are in debates with Shell, but why did we then continue to get into debates with a financial, to be specific, the Dutch bank ING, which is the largest Dutch bank. It's also on the global level. It's an extremely large bank. It's one of the 30 what is called globally systemically relevant institutions. And I also, one of the reasons we decided to address a bank is because they are hidden climate actors. Their own activities don't emit that much CO2, but the financing they provide to companies like Shell and to companies, the cement company, which is being sued in Switzerland, and all other kinds of companies, lead to very high emissions. In the case of ING Bank, it's 260 megaton of CO2 equivalent. And to put that in perspective, that is about 1.5 times the emissions of the Netherlands as a whole. So this global bank has huge emissions, and it impacts all sectors of the economy. Obviously, it is involved in a lot of fossil fuel activities. So that is very important for us, but it's also involved in companies doing mining in Indonesia or being active in the agricultural sector in Latin America with all kinds of issues around deforestation. So by addressing ING Bank, we can actually address a lot of impacts communities experience in one go. And I think another reason why it's very interesting to engage with a financial in litigation is that what they finance determines how the economy will look in the future. So if they at the moment continue to finance fossil fuel expansion, which ING does, that means we will continue on the path of dangerous climate change. Well, if they would start funding a lot more renewable energy, our energy system can also change. So where finance flows today, the economy follows tomorrow. So that's why we have chosen ING Bank to engage with in this litigation. And as I mentioned, we think it's a very good way to get the voice of communities and the voice of youth heard. So the case is together with Friends of the Earth Netherlands, but also with the youth wing of Friends of the Earth Netherlands, Milieudefensie Jong, they are called. And this is a picture of when we presented the summons to ING Bank at their headquarters. The lady in the middle is the chairperson of Milieudefensie Jong, and she was one of the key speakers there. And I think, as you can see from the headlines, it really gets the debate going on the role of financials in climate change and the impacts they have around the globe. And I think that is really helpful also for Winnie, that's her name, to get into a debate with people from ING Bank and to get the perspectives and the worries of young people across in the boardroom of ING. So that's, I think, an extremely valuable thing about these litigation processes. But I think I must also be realistic, as one of the earlier speakers mentioned, litigation takes a long time. Litigation is very expensive. There is no denying that. But I also think we already see the impact in getting the voice heard of communities and of young people. As you see here in the newspaper reporting, so in the public debate, our voice gets across. And it has also opened the door to discussions with corporations and not with their low-level civil society managers, but really at the highest level of the corporations, at CEO level. Thanks to our litigation efforts, we get invited to discuss with big corporations, and we have the opportunity to convey our concerns. And that has also led to, in the case of ING, they have taken some small steps to improve their climate policies. So even before we have finished the whole process of litigation, which will indeed still take a couple of years in the worst case scenario, we already see effects now. And I think that also goes for politicians, as somebody mentioned earlier as well. Due to the fact that we pursue these kinds of cases against corporations, it becomes easier for politicians to come up with measures to address the impacts corporations have on communities in the global north and in the global south. So I think even though it is a long-term process, you see impacts earlier on in the process as well, and that is very valuable. So I am very happy with the activities of the WCC in this area, and I hope I have made you a bit more enthusiastic about the opportunities which are here to get your voice heard at the levels where people can actually have an impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jasper, for that wonderful presentation and for the encouraging words that even though litigation is quite litigious and takes time, it is still doable and still yields a lot of results that are impactful. Now, I would like to welcome Sibusiso from South Africa and Africa Climate Alliance to also give us an example from the South African perspective and again tell us what they're doing there for the continent and for their country as well. Sibusiso, if you can hear me, you can proceed.
Thank you so much, Program Director. I hope you can hear me and see me clearly.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. It is Sibusiso Mazomba here from the African Climate Alliance. Before I start my intervention for today, I think I'd like to take 1 minute just to take a moment of silence for all the victims of the ongoing losses and damages that are going on across the world due to the human-induced climate crisis that is going on right now. All right. Thank you all so much for that. So as I mentioned, my name is Sibusiso Mazomba from the African Climate Alliance, and it is such an honor to be here today amongst all of you, the members of the World Council of Churches, as well as different organizations and constituencies who are, gathered here today in the subject of climate litigation. And just acknowledging all the previous speakers that have gone before me who have shared really quite in depth about different aspects of climate litigation. And I think the handbook, that is presented here today as a tool to hold financiers accountable is one that is really important because, we're seeing more and more the demand for these kind of climate litigation cases. And of course, litigation, as I think one of the earlier speakers mentioned, that, litigation should be the last resort because once it gets to litigation, that it's already too late, right? And so it's really important that we're convening these kinds of spaces between ourselves, but also between the people that are responsible for making decisions that affect people, so that we have these open conversations. And the handbook does focus on financiers, but my previous speaker, Hillary, also did mention that the people that have the duty to protect the environment so that it is livable and that it is safe for citizens is governments, right? And so that is the first entity that we're holding accountable when it comes to climate litigation, because then they're the ones who should be taking all of these actions to make sure that their citizens are protected and that they're safe. So just to introduce the organization that I'm from briefly. So I'm Sibusiso from the African Climate Alliance. The African Climate Alliance is a youth-led grassroots organization that acts and advocates for climate justice in Africa. So we are Africa-based, and we do have a very active network of young people from across Africa, particularly Southern, Eastern, and Western Africa, where we have an active network, that basically works on acting on climate change. And so we work at the local level. So, making sure that we build the capacity in young people to be able to take action on climate change in their communities. So community action is what we believe is the solution to, the ongoing challenges that we're facing. So as the African Climate Alliance, as I said, we act and we advocate for Afrocentric climate justice by building a grassroots climate movement in Africa where young people are equipped with Afrocentric socio-environmental education to act and advocate and achieve climate justice in their communities. And I think the aspect of climate justice is one that is most important, right? Because when we speak about these litigation cases, for example, it's often in the interests of the most vulnerable. And Hillary did touch on this before, about public interest cases, which are, for the interest of the public, particularly vulnerable groups. So today I wanted to share very briefly about the Cancel Call court case, which was launched in South Africa in 2021 against the South African government, right? So South Africa, we're very lucky that we have a very progressive constitution that mandates some of these rights, particularly in Section 24 of our constitution, which is in our Bill of Rights. You have the right to a safe, a clean and livable environment, one in which one can not only survive, but also thrive. So South Africa is one of those countries that have enshrined these environmental rights in our constitution. And one of the speakers earlier did touch on some of these rights that mandate these climate litigation cases. So the South African government has committed itself to have the duty to protect, the right to a clean and safe environment. And so on that basis, this court case was launched. So in 2019, the South African government basically came up with a policy, right? This policy is called an integrated resource plan, which is essentially a policy of how we get our electricity for the next 10 years in South Africa. So imagine 2019/2020, meaning this policy was supposed to last us until 2030. So with that commitment that the South African government has made, particularly through its Ministry of Mineral Resources and Energy, we then as civil society, particularly the African Climate Alliance with a coalition of partners, Center for Environmental Rights, which were our litigation experts, so that they were a very invaluable tool that we used in this litigation case that we launched in 2019. But also the Vogani Environmental Movement, as well as Groundwork, which was a group of civil society organization who believed in the same cause that we were fighting against. So when this policy came out in 2019, it was the Integrated Resource Plan. We then went over it and saw that there was basically more commitments that were being made towards fossil fuels in South Africa. And remember, the plan is supposed to take us until 2030, which really is a contradiction to the commitments, both domestic commitments, but also international commitments that the South African government has made in order to phase out fossil fuels, in order to deal with this climate crisis under the broader United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in the United Nations. So with this contradiction, we then, had multiple bilaterals with the government to, try and make sure that this final decision on including additional coal into our energy plan would not be commissioned. Because if you look at the plan, that IRP, Integrated Resource Plan, had basically 3 to 4 large power stations of coal commissioned between 2020 and 2030, which is grossly out of line with the principles that they've committed themselves to phase out fossil fuels in the interest of dealing with climate change, but in the interest particularly of climate justice. So we then had those bilaterals, weren't very successful in that process, because government, when they make these policies, they have to do public consultations, right? So that public consultation cycle did not yield any effective or substantive outcomes that we had hoped for that would support climate justice in South Africa in line with our constitution. So that, as a last resort, we then had to launch this court case. So the court case was called the Cancel Call, right? So it was launched at the High Court of Pretoria. Pretoria is the central capital of South Africa. We launched this court case in the hopes that the courts would support us in reversing the decision that the government had made to commit to an additional 3 to 4 large power stations of coal, right? So that was in 2021. And the messaging, that we basically, as the Cancel Coal Coalition, were pushing for was the understanding that as South Africa, we're a coal-dependent country and we're undergoing a just transition away from coal. And so we wanted to raise support and awareness, for the just transition in South Africa, but also to emphasize the constitutional arguments against new coal-fired power in South Africa. And these are very high-level decisions that, are mandated by very high-level decisions that are made in the international arena when it comes to climate change. One of them being the United Nations Framework on Convention on Climate Change. One of them being, one of our previous speakers mentioned the General Comment number 26 on, the special interests of children to have a meaningful input into, decisions that affect them. One of them more recently is the ICJ, the International Court of Justice ruling that basically says that states have a duty to act on climate change. So that was also one of our messaging, but also highlighting really the potential for South Africa, to transition away from coal, the potential that holds to create jobs. There's research being done that it can create up to 1 million jobs by 2030 if we meaningfully invest in the just transition. But also, for health reasons, I think that was the biggest aspect of this case. The fact that, coal is affecting the health of not only present, but also future generations, right? Which is an argument that we're more increasingly seeing, this argument for future generations. And so that was in 2021. And I want to fast forward to 2024, where we then had a court date, right? So initially in 2021, we asked, the minister and the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy to give us all the records that they used in order to make this ruling on the Cancel Coal court case. And they refused to do that. So we had to then, go to the courts to tell the courts to, basically subpoena the government in order to submit these records. And we eventually got those records. And upon going over those records, it was very apparent the fact that young people and children particularly were not consulted in the decision to get to, additional new coal in South Africa's electricity plan from 2019, which is extremely concerning because, as was mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, it's children who are going to inherit the world of tomorrow. And so children, more than anyone, need to be included in these decisions. If children are not part of these decisions, that means that we have leaders who are making decisions with consequences which they are not going to feel, but it's the children who are not consulted that are going to experience the consequences of those decisions even further. And so this principle of intergenerational equity that has been brought up, by some of the previous speakers as well, is one that is very important. And the ruling on cancel call was that basically the Minister of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy cannot go ahead with the decision to procure an additional and new coal into our electricity plan. Why? Because they do not consult children and children and youth who are most impacted by the decisions that they would be taking at that point. And so with that ruling was one that was a landmark case in South Africa. And this is not the first environmental ruling that we're getting from our courts. The first one was in 2019 in a case by Greenpeace, where basically the courts decided in 2017 that an environmental authorization that had been given by the minister for a proposed coal-fired power station had to consider climate change impacts when they were doing their authorizations. And so this is the predicament that we're facing today, where you have environmental ministers and mineral resources ministers who have the authority to give licenses to some of these financiers without really meaningfully consulting with those who are most affected, who oftentimes are communities, right? And I mentioned earlier that that's at the level that the African Climate Alliance works at. And so with that lack of consultation, we then have this ruling from the High Court of Pretoria to challenge that decision and to say that people who are most affected at the community level need to be consulted. And so that is the case study from South Africa that I wanted to share. I think I'm running out of time as well. Facilitator?
Yes, you can. You can wrap it. You're done. Thank you. Thank
I
you
think
so much.
just 1 minute.
We can give him a round of applause.
Perhaps.
Okay.
I just want, can I ask for 1 minute to wrap up? So that was the ruling that we got. And so we have this ruling in our hands to use it as a tool for climate justice and to hold decision makers accountable for their decisions, right? And so that is where we are as a Cancel Call campaign. We're also working basically on a tool that will be a child rights impact assessment, because in your environmental authorizations, there's a lot of impact assessments that are done around culture, around the environment itself, around ecosystems, biodiversity, etc. But none of them consider the rights of children. And so that is the next stage of this Cancel Call campaign, where we're then giving tools to the government, right? Because we are using the law to hold them accountable. But I think one of our previous speakers mentioned this idea of transformation, right? Litigation should result in transformation. So we're giving those tools and creating these tools in collaboration with children and those most affected in order to say, or to give sort of a guide or a roadmap to these decision makers to say, when you're making some of these decisions, when you're consulting with some of the vulnerable groups, here are the steps that you should take and why. So I want to end there and just say thank you all so much for your time, and just to the World Council of Churches for the invitation to today's session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sibusiso. Thank you. You can clap for him. And I've seen Frederic has asked you to share the link to the ruling and the tools that you have mentioned as well, so that we can also share to the group that is here. Now, we have heard a lot about the tools that can be used, examples across Africa and the global north as well. I also now want us to move to another session, last but not least, of how the interfaith organizations can come together and join forces towards this cause as well, right? So allow me to welcome our next speakers, Anthony Blaze. He can do the introduction.
Hello. Hello, Africa. Africa. Guys, Africa is known for energy. You need to stretch. Yeah, you can stand. You can stand for, can stand. Let's stand for a bit. Let's stand, let's stand, let's stand. Let's stand. Okay, yes, 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 yes. Yeah, let's plant a tree.
For everyone online, if you would also like to take a stretch or get a glass of water, it's true that it's very long now because we are we had to start late. That's why we are taking a bit more time. So don't hesitate if you need to take a small break
All right.
or stretch or glass of water.
Frederick, we are back now. Yeah.
Great, okay. So thank
Okay.
Okay, we can continue due to time. I can see also the rains are here, but you can take water and then come back, isn't it? As you stretch. I'm Anthony. I'm Anthony Blaze. I'm a Christian. I represent the Interreligious Council of Kenya. Interreligious Council of Kenya. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you meant it, do it again. Yeah. The Interreligious Council of Kenya is the Kenyan chapter of the Religions for Peace at the international, at London. We have the Religions for Peace that was started by all nations on promoting peace. But later on, they realized without justice, you can't have peace, isn't it? Actually, one of the African soil, one of our the African children, Nelson Mandela said, peace without justice is an illusion, isn't it? Peace without justice is. So thank you so much, WPP, for the WCC, World Council of Churches, for having this discussion about climate justice. At Interreligious Council of Kenya, I'm a program coordinator at the environment and climate change. We have different departments, but I support religious leaders across Kenya in promoting environmental conservation and climate change. We have a task force that does this. Me, I'm the technical person that does the drafting of petitions, the letters, taking those letters to the ministry, knocking those doors. But the people who do the thinking are religious leaders, the youths, the women of faith. And today, I've been joined by one of them who sits in that task force, Mr. Robin Murimi, who will be sharing with you specifically what they did with the Lamu case. At the environment program, we have a project called Reclaiming Our Green. When God created the earth, it was green. Then we tampered with it. It is no longer green. So how do we reclaim back? And in that project, one of it is how do we make our churches, our faith-owned assets green? And there's where we started working with churches, mosques, on how to green. Somebody asked, which churches have been greened? Somebody asked, which are some of the churches that have been greened, that are promoting renewable energy? Actually, somebody here is joining from the Anglican, the Green Anglican. There's the Green Anglican movement that work together with Mwangaza Light, and they are certifying churches. If your church powers their PA with clean energy, you get a certificate that you're a green church, you're a green mosque. There are so many churches, I can give you examples. In Nairobi, I think all the Catholic churches, Basilica, Holy Family Basilica, with the Anglican, the All Saints, you will see the solar panels on top of there. So they're promoting renewable energy. They are promoting the reuse, the recycle, and the waste thing of it. But I really like what Mazomba started with saying. Africa, we are really facing, and he told us to be quiet for a minute. Africa, there's something which is happening in Africa. Africa is in pain, and we know that it is through pain. When a woman is in pain, something good is coming out, isn't it? So Africa, young people, if you're not embracing that pain now, if you're not using your digital tools to promote renewable energy, to call, to speak to power, then you're not part of parcel of that rebirth that Africa is going through. As I speak now, I was really, really down of what is happening in Nigeria, what is happening in Tanzania. We have woken up yesterday with something that has happened in Elgeyo Marakwet, landslides, and people knew this thing is going to come. Kenya, our short rains, these are our short rains, they know. So poor leadership, poor governance, people have died. What is happening in Congo, what is happening in Madagascar, Africa is in pain. So I was really thinking of how to talk about litigation when actually I'm so much in pain. Let me begin by, first of all, thanking the World Council of Churches and All African Council of Churches for convening this important summit, Congress, making Africa our home and our future. There's something I told African youth leaders in Rwanda in April when we met in Rwanda on faith and food systems. Africa, yes, 80% of us are youth. Africa is a youthful population, isn't it? So there's something good about you. You have energy, and that's why you can stay up to 5 listening. You have energy, and you have the creativity, the innovation. But how will we ensure that sustainability? You know about sustainability? My child, I have a daughter, my daughter will enjoy all this, will enjoy a clean energy, a clean environment, clean water. How? There are 2 things we need to talk about. And Kenya, at the moment, Mr. Kevin and Isabella, you'll allow me to speak. I always speak without any cutting or editing. I know you have been told about food insecurity. Africa, we have no problem with food insecurity. We have an issue with food sovereignty. That's number 1. Let's produce what we want, not what other people want. Are we together? Ethiopia produces rice, enough. Kenya, our terrain, we have enough land. Nigeria has enough land, but they can't produce enough rice like Ethiopia. Because Kenya, we are busy producing coffee and tea, which we are taking outside. So most of our fertile land in Mount Kenya, we are busy producing what we don't want. Our people are going hungry. We need to talk about food sovereignty. Number 2, we need to talk about energy. And thank you, AACC, for having this discussion about renewable energy, Lamu, the coal. Kenya, Africa, God blessed you with enough sunlight. God blessed you with enough water, enough wind, and enough geothermal. There's no time for us to talk about coal. There's no time for us to talk about powering our development with coal, something that was used in 1820s by the Chinese and the developed world. And they are facing the ramifications now. We are blessed with enough sources of life, enough renewable energy. Are we together up to there? RCK, we were part and parcel of this campaign, the Lamu, and the lawyer in our commission will tell you more about the litigation. I don't know much about the litigation part of it. He's a lawyer, he will tell you more. But religious leaders, I remember on that day when Kenyan government announced that they are going to establish coal. Religious leaders led by our chairman by then, Father Reverend Mutie, Joseph Mutie of African Institute Churches, Sheikh, the late Sheikh, they went to Lamu in a boat. They were very afraid. The only thing they were carrying, the Sheikh was only carrying his rosary. And the Reverend was carrying his Bible, going to face Amu Power Plant, the company that was awarded to establish coal, to do coal in Lamu. Imagine Lamu. Lamu is a place, as Isabella said, UNESCO has, it has protected it as a heritage. You go and establish coal there. It is so evil. We wrote a letter. There's a letter we wrote to the ICBC bank. Before something comes, there's banks behind it. Africa, you love sports. Who funded Africa Cup of Nations? Young people. Who funded, I will speak. I'm at AACC. AACC lazima uongee. Here's where Desmond Tutu spoke. You have to speak. If you don't speak, you'll keep quiet. Cindy, who funded African Cup of Nations? Total Energy. Who funded COP28 in Sharm Egypt? Total Energies. And they are speaking about renewable energy. We have to speak to power and say no. They fund you in one way, and they destroy the environment on the other side. We are now talking about religious leaders now in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania talking about the Stop EACOP, the longest crude oil pipeline in the world along Lake Victoria, which is going to kill millions and millions of biodiversity along Lake Victoria. Fishermen are going to go fish, all the aquatic lives in Lake Victoria endangered. Which company are financing that? The other day we were writing a letter to KCB because they are part and parcel of it. I was being told, Anthony, Subaru, you'll be hijacked, you'll be abducted. Stop taking those letters to those offices. So thank you so much, McKenna, also for saying some of the things that we have done. Religious leaders have developed toolkits, manuals. The Catholics have a letter that Pope Francis wrote about care for creation. It's called Laudato Si. Today, they have started collecting 1,000 petitions. You can go to Laudato Si, sign on how we are meeting the Paris Agreement as Kenya, and even as Africa. The Muslims have what we call the Al-Mizan. I told you I'm from interreligious. So all those faith communities in Kenya, I'm here representing them. The Catholics through the KCCB, the Adventists through the SDAs, the Methodists, the Baptists, the Pentecostals, the Muslims, the Hindus, all of them are in organization. So when I speak, I will not only say what Christians are doing, I'll also say what Muslims are doing in promotion of environmental conservation. The Green Anglican movement with the Anglicans are doing amazing work. They are working with Mwangaza Light. How many of you know a Mwangaza Light? If you have time, go to where AACC offices are and meet them and ask them what they're doing. The Green Anglican movement are certifying churches that are going green. They came, they came and we work and we amplified their work to even mosques and temples. Are we together? And that is something that we can amplify. One thing that interreligious councils have all religious leaders have agreed on is that the earth is sacred. We have to live in harmony with the Mother Earth. Quran says that when you tread, when you walk on this earth, press it gently. Human beings have thought that they are the apex, they are the apex of creation. We are not at the apex of creation. Very quickly, before I give my friend the remaining time to tell us about the Lamu, there are things that I was saying here. Yeah, I think I've mentioned much of it. Green Anglican promoted renewable energy certificate. Yes, there's something that we did, apart from the petitions that we did with the Interreligious Council of Kenya, where we collected signatures online. Another thing, we worked with Katiba Institute. Katiba Institute, Natural Justice, 350, and Greenpeace. What we call the moot court. How many of you have been to a court? How many of you have stepped into a court? Unfortunately, have never been to a court. But due to Lamu, we were able to act how a court looks like in community, in churches and mosques. And we were doing a moot court, an example of a court. Some people acting like they are defending. And we realized one thing, young people, when you're fighting for something, these financiers will also finance people to hit you back. I remember when we were working on this, the Lamu, coal kills. ICBC, the bank that was financing this project, actually financed some young people to say that, you are fighting our money. These people are going to give us money. This project is going to bring employment. And young people are really fighting us on the street. As we protested on the street, there were also another young people protesting, asking for jobs. Are we together? So it was really, you have to remain on course. Because even those who are promoting this dirty coal, they were also on the street fighting for. Are we together? Yeah. So we met them in the court, in the mood. Some of them came, some of them are even internally. They are inside those movements of yours. They are listening and they are taking words back. There are a lot of challenges religious leaders faced. Okay, are we together? But they remained steadfast. They remained true to the word of the earth is sacred. Thank you so much. I cannot exhaust what we did from 2019 to 2025 last week in Malindi, but allow me to invite Mr. Murimu, who is a lawyer within the commission, just to go deeper into the Lamu case. Thank you so much.
The disadvantage of being called last is I will be the one who will be boring you. So anyway, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Murimi Karani, or you can call me Robin. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and I represent the youth of Evangelical Alliance of Kenya at the Interreligious Council. That's how I got myself there. But my purpose here is just to explain all this whole thing that has been talked about in terms of litigation. So it's basically a small story. In 2007, our government decided to create a blueprint for our development on how Kenya becomes a middle-level industrializing country. So they say that we need to add our electricity power by another 10,000 megawatts. So one of the projects they proposed was having a coal plant. And one of the things that coal will need, the South Africans will tell you, is that it needs a lot of water for cooling. So they have to put it where they can strategically get water. So that's how they ended up in Lamu, because it is next to the coastline. So our laws, fortunately for us, we have a new constitution from 2010 that is also very progressive. It gave us a right to clean health. It also gave obligations to the state on how they can respect that environment. So one of the things that they need to do, if they are doing a project that actually engages our environment, they have to do something we call an environmental impact assessment study. So that report has to be produced before any project can take place. So our people came together and formed a consortium company made up of Gulf Energy and Setam. It's called Amu Power. It's the one that was responsible for setting up the plant. So for that EIA, that environment impact assessment, they have to go back to the people and conduct public participation. So what they used to do for us is they would go to Lamu and launch a new dispensary and call people to come and celebrate a new dispensary, a new toilet. And while you're there, you sign an attendance sheet. And then they use that to say that they conducted public participation with the community. So back in 2019, when that report came out, it was grossly undermined, or it was really not what was to happen. Instead of saying how much it would affect the marine life or the soil for cultivation, it kind of made it look very simple or very minute to what was actually on the ground. So religious leaders under AACC, we came together here in Nairobi in 2018, and we brought together all the organizations that were fighting this thing in Lamu. And we decided to create for them an association called Save Lamu. Save Lamu is an umbrella organization for all these organizations, these grassroots movements that were fighting the coal plant in Lamu. So we took them together and we instituted a case at the environmental tribunal. Now, what we were challenging back then was the license that was issued to this company, because that EIA was not reflective of what was on the ground. So the tribunal agreed with us in 2019 and canceled that license. So that would mean they cannot establish that plant. But they went back to court. They went to the Environment and Lands Court to appeal that decision. So that appeal is the one that has taken us from 2019 up to last week on 22nd October is when the Environment and Lands Court sitting at Malindi threw out that appeal and confirmed the ruling of the tribunal that the EIA was grossly erroneous and that there was no public participation per se to the people. So that was my bit of exactly what we were doing and an explanation of climate litigation at the Interreligious Council of Kenya. Thank you so much.
I think we could have added you more time, but yeah, officially our time is already passed. Though we had, I know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions, 7 questions. So could you put Frederick on the screen? My thoughts were, Frederick does the next steps, which is 3 minutes. And then for us who are here, we have to break officially, but we can remain here and answer questions, but we let the session to end as per the program. Would that be fine? But we stay here. Would that be okay? Your hand is up. Is it okay if we, okay? All right. So Frederick, if you can hear me, we can, you can show the next steps. Then we have to end it, but those we have to make the room, we'll be here in the room for those who want to remain with the questions. We do them slowly without rushing. That's fine.
Thank you very much, Kevin and Isabel. And I would like to then just wrap up with basic information on next steps, very practical information for any of you who may have felt that this resonates with you and that you are interested in engaging in legal action and discussing this with your church leadership. So very concretely, we have the support from a foundation, and we have now engaged in the second phase of this project, in which we are right now already developing this one soft law case that will be filed in the beginning of next year. But in parallel, we are scoping for 2 to 3 hard law cases. Isabel can explain you more on that later, but In a nutshell, we are looking for churches ready to do this, to then give us concrete information on the kind of legal action you would like to propose. And by June, we will then look at all the proposal, and 2 to 3 will be funded by this foundation, which is backing this project. But for all the others, which may not be selected as being the most impactful for the global one, we are still gonna do everything we can to find funders. We are collaborating with PillNet, also for pro bono support. And what we really want to see is a proliferation of legal action by churches, so there cannot be enough proposals. And if yours is not going to be selected for the one accompanied by the foundation, we will do everything possible to still make it happen if it is considered as very strategic and well thought through by the lawyers. But the lawyers will also be available to help shaping the details with the churches. What else then? For those who may not yet feel ready for doing legal action but are interested, there's a lot of things you can do. Hilary mentioned the amicus curiae brief to accompany ongoing cases, but you can also do things which are as simple as promoting that song which we sang at the beginning, The Path of Justice, or propose it to your church's singing groups or for worship. And then we are very grateful to Kevin that he has prepared a super handy 2-page leaflet, which is really to be circulated. It summarizes very well the content of the handbook for those who just don't have the time for all the details, just want to know the essence. And that leaflet, we'll put it in the chat box, but also on the screen in QR code. It's something which you can do if you have just a few minutes, then share it with social media. Same for this 1-minute video. So there's a whole menu of things you can do, from very simple to more elaborate. And I'm extremely grateful for the very inspiring testimonials and expertise shared by all the speakers in this workshop. And thank you very, very much, Kevin and Isabel, for leading it on the ground. And thank you so much to all participants in Kenya and online. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Frederic. We appreciate for the time as well. Unfortunately, on our screen, we cannot see who else is here online. Okay, yeah, but we appreciate all of you for joining us, hybrid, online. And we have to bring this to a close now so that we can informally now continue with question and answer. But officially, we have to close this, unfortunately. So with that, can we share in the grace? Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of Holy Spirit with us now, forevermore. Amen. And mercy shall follow you all the days of our lives. The Lord. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Great.
Thank you so much.
here's
And
our-
if you can, fill in the online survey for a short feedback on this webinar, on the workshop.
Yeah. All right. So here's the QR code that you can, it's just these 2 pages, which can summarize a lot, the book that you have or that you have seen, summarizes in just 2 pages. And you're able to share with your church in a few minutes on what they need to do, and then we can engage further on it. So friends, our session officially has ended, but we had questions, and me and Bella, we have to stay and now do it slowly, but leaving the room open for whoever wants to go is free to go. But it would be really good that you hear from your comrades, from each other, the questions and what we have to share. So let's do it how we had. So it was you, then it was her, then you.
Hello,
That would come
everyone.
4-5.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I
Hello.
know we're really tired, but Thank you to all the people that spoke today. You spoke really well. My name is Tabitha Akonji. I am a legal practitioner from Nigeria. I'm a barrister and solicitor of the Nigerian Bar. And I want to say that I'm really, really grateful to be here. My first question is that we spoke a lot about litigation. However,
So thanks again, everyone online. I believe we are now disconnected from what is happening on the ground because we had restrictions on the technical support. Thank you so much, Ivars, also for staying from WCC Communications. And we will send a follow-up email to everyone online with also the resources which were shared. Thank you again. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, all the best.
Thank you. This is Karabo from South Africa. I think I was partly answered, but when we started with the conversation, I felt as if the subject matter is of a high knowledge, or maybe it's more directed to people with more knowledge. And the question around it is, how do we translate the subject matter to a lay person, maybe in a community? It also goes back to what you were saying, to say, what is the methodology and what is the idea around taking this work to our churches? Not everyone can capture the terms used. Not everyone can also capture the concepts used around litigation or legal action. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Robin.
He's trying to throw me under the bus, but it's okay. Let me answer my fellow legal practitioner. So in Kenya, we actually give room for alternative dispute resolution as one of the first ways of dealing with any court. So if you have to do climate litigation for every matter that we go to court, you have to prove to court that you have actually attempted to have this matter settled outside of court. So most of the time when you find us in court, it means that that opportunity or that window for ADR has already collapsed. But we would appreciate it, but we are dealing with governments. So all I can say is when you're dealing with governments, the moment you get to do a petition against them, then there's no chance of actually sitting and having a resolution in a table. You have to leave it now to court to decide.
All right, thank you, Robin. Just to add to it, on how we intend the churches to be involved. So we will share, that's why we have your emails as well, a template that captures expression of interest first, and certifying some basic grounds that you can further engage on. Because as Frederick mentioned, we have avenues. We are now seeking interest for hard law cases, but now ongoing, we have soft law cases. And we have partners who are willing to enable interested churches in accompanying them all through. So that's why we have this, but I'll show an email. But this is just a sample of how you can reach out with interest, then we can take up the conversation later. We've had numerous interests, and we're still room for more. But Anthony, sorry?
Yeah. Mine is just to add to her question.
Yeah.
Is that form, does it allow anonymity? It's called anonymity, not being known, non-disclosure. Because I'm from this city of Nairobi. There's a church near where I stay. It was a very good church, very beautiful. Somebody started dumping dustbins, the waste at the door. Now the waste is over the roof of that church. And the fumes are going into homes and killing, and children are really dying of cancer. And hospitals are making killings, billions of money in Nairobi, millions. How will I be able to feel that thing without me being afraid of being abducted?
Yeah,
we are in
yeah.
Kenya, we are in Africa.
Yeah.
You can get lost very.
I agree. So part of the resources that we'll share will show the avenues that start from low risk to the risk that you can, your country even allows anyway. Because even laws in some countries don't even allow for you to lodge certain cases, is it? Because I know like Zella gave us an example last time of the limitations they have and the laws they can only work with, which are available. But as Anthony shared, this expression of interest is where you feel that is within our space only, the WCC only, which it has proper structures that enable protection for everyone and anyone, because they handle quite sensitive data of people. So there are proper structures of accountability on people's data first, so that you can be surely assured of.
Yes, just to add on that, as he has said, there are proper structures on confidentiality and data protection. So rest assured that the information you will share with WCC will only be used for the correct, or will only be processed fairly, and will not be processed with other third parties. Okay, so it will just be within us and for our own confidential use. Yes.
Yeah. Maybe to how to simplify what we're doing. So that is one element, is this 2-pager. I can find it here now. So that's why after we did this, I thought it's really nice to have a 2-pager for people who maybe not much into legal terms and just want to capture the key essentials of it. So the 2-pager we will share, I think you've seen it. Okay, on the QR code that was here. That explains without much jargons, legal jargons, and just to seek interest first. So if you're really interested in going further, now we talk about this and how to go about it. But that first interaction with the flyer would give you a scope of what this is, just 4 pages. It take you 10 minutes to go through it. I really encourage you to go through it. And then as well, we have, right now we are working on a contextual Bible study to be used in, that can be used in any kind of church or faith church, I would say, because it's a Christian CBS. And this simplifies what we are doing into people who are not even exposed to litigation at all. So during the interaction on how we interpret the Bible, we can now bring this frame into the actually other avenues. What does the Bible guide us on to approach this, And once you start within the CBS, you start, now you can go deeper into legality. You may develop the interest and now go deeper into it. But the CBS materials, we intend to use them as from next year. We are developing them now because it has to take a consultative with other churches to go around it. But that will also come in handy in simplifying what we are doing. So it's on our minds so much. So we are trying as much as possible. But we're also open to other ideas. of how we can simplify all this as well. And we encourage for you to reach out to us anytime. Through the email that I will send to all of you, you will see our contacts, our email addresses that you can reach out anytime, anytime. So, yeah.
It's okay, thank you. My name is David Mware. I am a Kenyan.
Yeah.
I have a simple question, although with a scenario. Recently, there were landslides in Rift Valley.
Sorry?
There were landslides
Yeah.
in Rift Valley about a week ago, and people have lost lives, actually about 26, and 30 are still missing. Now, the government warned that there would be landslides due to heavy rains, but then they didn't give the citizens of the residents of the area that the landslide happened alternatives on what to do, or rather where to go to. So in this case, are we justified to sue the government for negligence, and does this fall under climate litigation?
Good.
It is just that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Bella, yeah, okay, you can. Yeah, we can take another one, then we do it together. Dennis, and then him. Yeah.
All right. Good evening. Good evening. Yes. My name is Dennis Great, and I'm an honest Kenyan, a young person, and a systematic environmental theologian. I am an overthinker, and I will share my thoughts and my questions as written. First of all, is to thank all the presenters for the wonderful sessions that they have given us, and gracias to all of them. Well, I have like two questions and an illustration to make. First of all is, where is my voice as a young person in climate litigation? Are there any laws that promote the voice of young people, not just picketing and demonstrating for social justice? Secondly, now with my illustration, a well-renowned Christian private university in Kenya is involved in degradation and destruction of human environment, to be specific, deforestation. The institution this year launched a research project where students would write papers on degradation and destruction of human environment in the context of sin. Now, having this faith actor as a bad example, doing contrary to what they are advocating for, how many students will be steering or be interested in writing the papers, because whatever they are writing against is whatever is happening to them. Now, I wrote an email and threats of expulsion and confiscation of academic papers because we raised our voices. Where does the law lie in a case like this? And lastly, my question is, according to Kenyan law, a child is one under 18 years. Does the law really respond to children as the main group that is affected? Or rather, what action are the youth doing to salvage the environment? Down there, I have listed a few questions, and that might need an extra attention. When will we stop pointing fingers? And this is a call to action to all of us. Where is social justice too in these climate action spaces? Social justice in quotes. And what if you wake up one day and you find trees and soil and water and air in the streets of Nairobi protesting, seeking their own justice, of which we have seen in various places, for example, Elgeyo Marakwet. Now, will the organizations be the first ones to suffer brutality? Thank you very much, team.
This is yeah, maybe Bella and Robin, before you answer. I just want to relate to him as well. I actually lost, I'm called Minor, as Kevin as well. And I lost my cousin in last year's floods. Down there. Sorry.
Okay. Robin, do you want to respond? And then I can take part of his questions. And then I think, Anthony, you'll also take part of the question on the university and religious university. Okay.
Okay, I'll just do a very legal jargon, but simplified. So number one, part of the reasons we are saying we have a very progressive constitution is that that right does not just come to a right. We have a whole chapter dedicated to environment and land. And that's where we have obligation. Now, the obligation for every person is how we can protect our environment for future generations, not just the children or the people that we are here with, but for future generations. And that has been the benchmark for most of our cases at the Environment Court. Because the moment you now start talking of future generations is when they look at exactly what is happening. Number two, internationally, we have an instrument, a legal instrument called the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Management Mitigation. And most of our countries in Africa do not really follow it. So to answer the question that was asked with regards to slides, we can actually sue the government because it is actually an obligation for them to protect future generations, to be prepared for those disasters. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is, were we prepared for such an eventuality? Noting that it has happened before, so it is not something new to us. Lastly, again, back to our constitution, we have a very good right that we like to call to. It's called Article 55. For my young person here, it's the right of the youth, and you have a right to be not only participate, to be associated, and to be included in all spheres of life. So anytime that you feel that right is being curtailed or threatened in any way, you have a legal mechanism to come to court. So most of the time is because none of us know about it. So you see about it and then you're like, what should I do? But we actually have legal avenues of litigating around it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think in addition to that, we also have the right to health and safety. Oh, right. Which one is which? Okay, thank you. So there's that right as well. So even as a young person, you have a right. Aside from the children that we're looking out for, you as a young person, your right is also there. And you also have a legal standing to petition the court. So you don't have to, the only avenue is not just for the next generation, even for us as well. It's there because it's your right as well. Okay. And then another way you can also collaborate. I mean, as he has said, there's interreligious council here, leverage on that, connect with them. That's another way youth can actually collaborate with the institutions that are bringing these petitions to court. Collaborate with faith institutions, with legal institutions. There's Katiba Institute, there's the Office of the Ombudsman as well that comes in handy. So collaborate with them. I am sure they are always, in fact, all these institutions always have, how do I say it? They always have an inclining to the youth and marginalized people. So please, let's use that to our advantage. Go to them and tell them you want to, even if it's a volunteering, they will not refuse. That's an avenue in which youth can actually give back or be integrated into this course. Yes.
No, I think you have said it all. Due to time, I think we'll share contacts. We'll see how to collaborate. If it's a faith-based institution, then we need to know if which faith. And then you young people, there's power in numbers. Don't do it alone. Do it with other youths. When you are in big numbers, they fear. You can't be intimidated. Okay. In anything you do, embrace large numbers. If you do it alone, it's very tough. So there's power in numbers, isn't it? Yes, power in numbers. So, but we'll see how to work together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You have a last question now so that we finish. Yeah?
It's not actually a question, just a layman's own contribution from my understanding. I am Joyce Lynn from Cameroon, and over the years, I work with an NGO that is actually promoting green initiatives. And so we fund projects that we see that are promoting the aspect of going green. And even in our environments, let's start from our homes. how do we mitigate the aspect of climate change? Someone just spoke about waste disposal, how you mount up waste. But let's get into recycling. Let's get into dumping the dirt at the positions where we're supposed to dump them so that government agencies can pick them up. That's our own contribution. When you are at home, you have lights on, you have AC on, you have TV, televisions on. Even when you're not using all those things, those are aspects of that are affecting climate change. So you can actually switch off the lights when you're not there. You can switch off the television when you're not using it. You can switch off the AC. How do you protect your children? Don't expose them to so much of AC air. Let them get the natural air. We have good environments in Africa, and those are very important for us. So those are things that we have to leverage on, make use of them, so that if at the end of each month, you find yourself paying so much bills for electricity, it means you are using it unnecessarily, because there will be times that you will not be home the whole day. Those are times you can save your electricity. There will be times that you will be home and you not need it because there is natural light. Make use of those things. So these are also natural ways that we as individuals and families, we can use, or it can be like our part that we are playing in climate mitigation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And it's good to see that we are actively engaging in initiatives that support our climate and our globe as a whole. So with that, okay, with that, I think we have come to the the official end of our session. We are done, guys. I'm just joking. Yes, we've come to the end of our session. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your patience. And thank you for showing up. Thank you.